His Excellency Mr. Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, His Excellency Mr. Mohamed Muizzu, President of Maldives, Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Excellencies, distinguished representatives of the private sector. It is my great honor and privilege to welcome you to the high-level closing session of the Global Business Network Forum. I thank the government of Antigua and Barbuda for graciously hosting us here in beautiful St. John's. I thank the governments of Denmark and Ireland for their generous support to host the forum here. I also thank all our partners, distinguished speakers, and participants for their contribution. Together, we have delivered a forum that has been both productive and inspirational. We have further strengthened our network and forged strong partnerships to advance the SIDS priorities and the SIDS agenda. We received invaluable insights from the governments, businesses, and investment communities. They have shared many practical solutions to tackle the pressing challenges of the SIDS. And we have fresh perspectives on how they can better engage to deliver the Antigua and Barbuda agenda for SIDS, the ABAS. In the ABAS, we have concrete goals and targets for the SIDS, the development partners, the private sector, and other stakeholders. We are happy to see the commitment of the private sector to support the SIDS in achieving this ambitious agenda. Excellencies, over the last 2 days, we heard some recurring themes that we may now need to take forward and turn into actions. Allow me to briefly present the key takeaways. First, we heard about the need to further leverage private sector innovation and financing to unlock untapped opportunities for blue and green economies in the SIDS. Here, the focus was on fostering greater integration between blue and green economies to generate more jobs and drive economic growth while minimizing environmental impacts. The discussions led to several concrete proposals, including the establishment of a blue-green development fund for SMEs, the creation of a SIDS investment platform, and enhanced protection of intellectual property. To advance these initiatives, a multi-stakeholder forum was proposed, especially to promote blue-green development plans for SIDS and link them with new funding opportunities and platforms. The need for further leveraging existing platforms and initiatives such as the Blue Hub supported with Portugal was also highlighted. Secondly, we heard about the need to empower local communities to strengthen the resilience of islanders and help diversify their economies. In any such partnerships, it would be important to harness local expertise and value cultural context. We need to promote local products and brands, locally led and owned creative industries, and support digital connectivity and networking between local and global entrepreneurs. Successful locally led innovations, such as through the utilization of agricultural byproducts, need to be further encouraged and scaled. And then we also heard about the potentials of sports tourism as a catalyst for economic development. We need coordinated and multi-stakeholder efforts to enable SIDS to reap its full benefits. Excellencies, third, we heard about the potential to strengthen the enabling business environment in SIDS. This requires strengthening business support organizations, improving labor conditions, and enhancing regional integration and collaboration. Fourth, we discussed ways and means to attract financing and investment into businesses in the SIDS. In this context, the need for a SIDS public-private partnership framework was highlighted. This can indeed facilitate stronger and direct collaboration between entrepreneurs and governments. Finally, we also discussed the potentials of the proposed Island Investment Forum under the Center of Excellence for SIDS. There was strong support from the business community for operationalizing this important deliverable of ABAS. I take this opportunity to call upon the development partners and other stakeholders to provide all necessary support in this regard. Excellencies, this is by no means an exhaustive list, but just a reflection of the rich and diverse discussion we have had over the last 2 days. Clearly, SIDS have tremendous potential, and the private sector have a crucial role to play to unleash it. The key takeaways of this forum will be presented at the Private Sector Roundtable on Tuesday. These will also constitute important elements for the UN Secretary General's recommendations for the strengthening of the SIDS partnership framework and the SIDS Global Business Network as requested by ABAS. Excellencies, Mr. Secretary General, distinguished participants, I now have the pleasure to move to our distinguished speakers on the panel who have honored us with their kind presence here today. I have the honor now to call upon the Honorable Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda and President of the SIDS4 Conference, to deliver his remarks.
Thank you very much, Honorable Secretary. I acknowledge the presence of the distinguished President of the Maldives, the Honorable Mohamed Muizzu, our distinguished Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, other members on the platform, members of the panel, and certainly all of the distinguished ladies and gentlemen present here this evening. And I say to all of you, welcome to Antigua, and I hope that you will enjoy the hospitality for which our country is known. Esteemed colleagues, delegates, members of the private sector, distinguished guests, as we draw the curtains on the SIDS Global Business Forum and turn our attention to start the SIDS4 conference, I am pleased with the type of engagement that has been displayed over the last 2 days. Just listening to the Honorable Secretary, it is evident that you have looked at a number of creative ways for SIDS to expand the economies and certainly to increase revenues. In fact, there are lots of unexploited opportunities in sports tourism, in the orange economy, and I especially like the recommendation for there to be a stronger public-private sector partnership. And I'll add here a public-private partnership for profit, not the usual public-private partnerships in which there's the outsourcing of service or services from the public sector to the private sector, but one in which the public sector takes an equity stake in various businesses, especially large businesses. And I say this from the standpoint that, generally speaking, in small economies, you'll find that the capital formation is not sufficiently large for the domestic private sector to pursue a number of large business opportunities. So almost invariably, those opportunities are dominated by the external private sector, primarily from the global north. What happens invariably is that a significant amount of profits that are generated from those businesses are actually repatriated to the global north, leaving these countries bereft of the capital formation to fuel strong growth and development. By having this public-private partnership for profits, you will find that investments that ordinarily the private sector in these small states cannot pursue on their own, that in partnership with the public sector, they're able to pursue these investments. And what happens with that model is that more of the profits are retained in the domestic economy to fuel growth and development. So I certainly commend and support 100% that recommendation for stronger public-private partnerships for profits. And this obviously differs from the conventional thinking that governments should not be involved in business. That may be so for large states where you have perfect competition and where there's a significant amount of resources to exploit these opportunities. But certainly within small states with their limited capacity, limited financial and human resources, there's a need for this type of collaboration with the public and private sectors in order to exploit these opportunities. Now, I have received reports of the type of insightful deliberations you've had, and I certainly want to commend you. The SIDS GBN should always be about forging partnerships and enhancing the vision for a brighter future for small island developing states. We have the opportunity through the SIDS GBN to tackle the challenges faced by SIDS. Though we are the most vulnerable group of countries globally, our vulnerability should not define who we are. In fact, our unique vulnerabilities should be opportunities for SIDS GBN to identify our strength and lay the groundwork for a more resilient and prosperous path forward. As the host of SIDS 4, and as we close this forum, I encourage you to reflect on our collective journey and further encourage you to continue this vital work with renewed vigor and commitment to the Antigua and Barbuda agenda for SIDS, the ABAS. One of the standout achievements of the SIDS GBN is the added emphasis on private sector tailored support for SIDS. We've seen firsthand how focused efforts can ignite our economies and create a ripple effect of growth and development. From innovative financing models to collaborative ventures, the private sector has shown its crucial role in shaping the future of our islands. By diversifying our economies, we are charting the course towards resilient prosperity. And we all know that diversification is key to SIDS. Many SIDS have economies that are not properly diversified and would have obviously contributed to our vulnerability. So diversification is key to achieve resilient prosperity. The discussions you've had, the strategies you've developed, and the partnerships you've formed are all pivotal in implementing the ABAS. This agenda is not just a plan, but certainly a promise to our people, our environment, and certainly our future. Let's take a moment to reflect on the tourism sector, a shining example of how private sector support can transform SIDS economy. And certainly the tourism sector is one of the areas in which SIDS are very competitive. And it is not a coincidence that most SIDS economies are dominated by tourism, because that is the area in which we have significant competence. Tourism has been a lifeline, providing jobs, fostering cultural exchange, and would have been the main driver of economic growth in most SIDS. In many of our islands, tourism has allowed us to showcase our natural beauty and certainly our rich heritage to the world. It has enabled us to build infrastructure, to support local businesses, and to create sustainable livelihoods. This sector's continued sustainable development is a testament to what can be achieved when the private sector steps in with tailored support, understanding the unique needs and potentials of SIDS. The story of Singapore serves as a powerful inspiration for us all. We all know what has happened with Singapore and its transformation, that it started as a small state, very limited resources, and that Singapore has transformed itself into a global economic powerhouse. And I can say here that Antigua and Barbuda, for sure, we have a vision of transforming this country into an economic powerhouse. And I've said to all in this country, even the generation that will succeed my generation, that even if we are unsuccessful in achieving an economic powerhouse, that is my generation. We expect the next generation to achieve that lofty goal of transforming Antigua and Barbuda into an economic powerhouse. And I'm quite sure that this is the aspiration of practically all SIDS. And I believe that we have the capacity to transform our respective countries into economic powerhouses. This transformation that happened in Singapore did not happen overnight. It was a result of strategic planning, relentless innovation, and a commitment to diversification. As I said before, diversification is key. By investing in education, technology, and infrastructure, Singapore has built a robust and resilient economy. And certainly, Singapore is an example for all of us to follow. This is a lesson for SIDS GBN and a lesson for all SIDS, that with vision, determination, and the right support, we too can achieve remarkable success. Diversifying our economies is not just a goal, but a necessity to build resilience and to ensure sustainable growth and development. The establishment of the SIDS Center of Excellence that will be launched this Thursday is an opportunity to invest in SIDS, similar to the investments that allowed Singapore to become more resilient. The Island Investment Forum, a component in SIDS, or the SIDS Center of Excellence, is an opportunity for the private sector to fully engage in SIDS, to bring to the table SIDS-tailored portfolios, but also an opportunity for new types of investments. And this is the SIDS Davos, which will be held on a biannual basis, in which we will invite investors to look at opportunities, unexploited and underexploited opportunities within SIDS, to help us to attract capital so that we can explore new areas of economic development for the benefit of our people. And certainly we are looking at investments that will empower and transform SIDS, and the use of certainly green and blue technology that will allow SIDS to become economic powerhouses within their respective regions. As we move from SIDS GBN to SIDS 4 and the SIDS Center of Excellence, I urge each of you to keep the momentum going. Remember, as you expand your business opportunities in SIDS, you should think smart, think environment, think sustainability, think about sustainable profits for the benefit of all. Our journey does not end here. It begins in you with every innovative idea, every partnership, and every step we take towards a sustainable future. By focusing on what truly matters, we can create lasting change that benefits not just our economies, but our people and our planet. In closing, let us recommit to the vision we have crafted together. And in essence, we want to make sure that we transform all SIDS into successful countries, into economic powerhouses. And as I said before, I'm sure that it can be done, certainly with the support of the private sector. So let us harness the power of our collective wisdom, our shared experiences, and our unwavering spirit. The future of SIDS is in our hands, and together we can shape it into one of resilience, one of prosperity, and sustainability. And again, the objective is to ensure resilient prosperity for all SIDS. I take this opportunity to thank you once again, to thank you for your dedication, your passion, and your hard work. Let us leave this forum inspired and ready to make a difference. Together, we will turn the aspiration of the SIDS Global Business Network into opportunities of growth, transformation, and diversification. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we kick off SIDS 4 here in our beautiful Twin Islands state. Once again, thank you.
I thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, for your important statement, and I take this opportunity to thank you for your steadfast support and strong leadership to make this forum a success. I now have the honor to kindly request His Excellency Mr. Mohamed Muizzu, President of Maldives, to deliver his statement. Mr. President.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Excellencies, participants of the SIDS Global Business Network, ladies and gentlemen. I thank the Secretary General of United Nations and the Under-Secretary General and High Representative, Ms. Rabab Fatima, for the invitation to address this forum. I am confident that the forum has provided valuable insights from all the representatives here today, from the private sector, civil society, international financial institutions, and multilateral and regional development banks. All of you are friends of SIDS. I ask the governments of SIDS to support the business community, the entrepreneurs, the investors, both local and foreign. The private sector has the most important role to play in any economy, from innovation to technology, from community empowerment to market trends. And this role, I believe, is even more critical in seeds. Enabling public-private partnerships, fostering trust, keeping the economic engine running. At the same time, putting into place ambitious development agendas. This requires careful maneuvering. I draw hope and optimism from forums like this. Let me make 3 calls to action. First, promote investments in micro, small, and medium enterprises and young entrepreneurs. In today's rapidly evolving and unpredictable global environment, the private sector in seeds is in need of support more than ever. It is the responsibility of governments to ensure ease of doing business, facilitate their capacity building, and open new avenues for financing. Governments must facilitate easier cross-border trade, open up new markets for MSMEs. This is how we invest in them and contribute to their growth. Governments must also protect their intellectual property rights. Businesses and entrepreneurs embrace innovation and invest in sustainable practices to remain competitive. We must commit to ensuring a regulatory environment that encourages investment, fosters innovation and entrepreneurship, and promotes sustainable development. We must make our policies and regulations less cumbersome and more robust. Second, prioritize inclusivity and empowerment of our local communities. Local enterprises are the bedrock of our small societies. They cater to the needs of societies in ways governments simply cannot. Therefore, empowering businesses is empowering our ability to govern. By prioritizing inclusivity and empowering our local communities, we boost connectivity between businesses and governments. This connection can leverage the strengths of both sectors to achieve common goals, from infrastructure development to disaster risk reduction. This is especially important in seeds where islands are dispersed over considerable distances geographically. The Maldives has made significant strides in empowering our local communities. My government intends to launch a $6.5 million loan facility for women entrepreneurs, with 25% of this fund allocated for women with disabilities. We believe that investing in women's economic empowerment will ultimately lead to our sustainable development. Third, provide platforms to forge partnerships and share experiences. Climate change, economic vulnerability, and limited resources are issues that demand swift and decisive action. The biggest challenge seeds face is the limited and in some cases restricted access to affordable financing for development. Combined with this, our small markets, limited credit worthiness, and vulnerability to debt distress hinder our abilities to invest. As a result, it is difficult to balance economic development and sustainability. This is where the private sector must step in. We must foster continuing dialogue between businesses and government agencies, creating platforms for engagement to facilitate knowledge sharing and partnership development. Finance should not be a barrier, but a bridge to prosperity for all. I therefore call upon the banks, multilateral institutions, and other financial entities to open their doors with responsibility and with foresight. Prioritize actions that make finance more accessible, affordable, and tailored to the needs of the private sector. We must do more to ensure partnerships are created with the private sector and the civil society. The Antigua and Barbuda agenda for seeds can be achieved only when we, the governments of SEEDS, partner with the private sector, put them on the driver's seat in our efforts in realizing resilient and inclusive prosperity for all. I thank you.
I thank you, Honorable President, for your very concrete recommendations to strengthen public-private partnership and very importantly for the initiatives that you're taking to support women entrepreneurship. Thank you, sir. I now have the honor to kindly request Mr. Antonio Guterres, the United Nations Secretary General, to deliver his statement. Secretary General.
Your Excellencies, the President of the Maldives and the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. We are here in beautiful Antigua and Barbuda for the 4th International Conference on Small Island Developing States, SEEDS 4, opening tomorrow. But allow me before start to express my deep solidarity to the people and the government of Papua New Guinea, a member of the SEEDS, and my condolences to the victims of the devastating landslides that have caused horrific death and destruction. Tomorrow's conference will agree on the Antigua and Barbuda Agenda for SEEDS, which charts a course of action to meet today's overlapping challenges and crises in partnership with the international community. Because small island developing states cannot achieve the sustainable, inclusive development they need only on their own. Mobilizing the resources needed by SEEDS will require a sustained commitment from the international community, and public money will not be enough. Multi-stakeholder partnerships, including especially with the private sector, will be essential. From financing renewable energy to promoting sustainable tourism and mobilizing capital for climate resilience, SEEDS will need to leverage private sector investments, expertise, and innovation. I urge governments to take the lead in developing conducive regulatory and policy environments underpinned by strong and accountable public institutions. And I urge multilateral development banks to adapt their business model to substantially mobilize private finance at reasonable costs and contribute to de-risking private investments. And I urge the private sector to play its part. First, by taking deliberate time-bound action to align your activities with the Sustainable Development Goals across all dimensions of your businesses. For example, with high levels of interest in critical minerals, I urge you to assess the full impact of mining on deep-sea habitats before making irreversible decisions. Aligning all business practices with the SDGs will require changes to corporate governance models and to internal incentives. Second, I urge you to prioritize climate action by developing and implementing ambitious, credible, and verifiable net zero plans. This means addressing emission reductions across the board with a view to marine protection and decarbonization of the shipping sector. And third, I ask that you use your voice and influence with governments to push for greater ambition across the spectrum of SDG implementation and particularly climate action. Excellencies, the Dynamic SEEDS Global Business Network Forum has helped to mobilize the private sector in preparation for the SEEDS 4 conference. The forum provides a clear entry point for the private sector into the SEEDS agenda. It provides an excellent platform for fostering innovation, building partnerships, driving accountability, and ensuring that business practices are aligned with success for seeds. The Global Business Network supports seeds across a range of activities, from helping to attract investment in the blue and green sectors to enabling micro, small and medium-sized enterprises to thrive. It can help to expand digital connectivity and ensure accessibility and affordability, key to improve access to education and healthcare, and enhancing disaster preparedness, prevention and response. Digital transformation also presents opportunities for economic diversification, particularly for women and young people. This forum has tackled all these issues. Strengthening the Global Business Network, together with the SEEDS Partnership Framework, will help to support implementation of the ideas expressed today. Excellencies, the financing challenges faced by SEEDS go far beyond this group of countries. They are symptomatic of financial turmoil in the developing world. The global financial system is outdated, dysfunctional, and unjust, and is failing to provide a safety net for many developing economies mired in debt. The United Nations is pushing for deep reforms to make it more representative of today's world and more responsive to today's challenges. Developing countries, including SEEDS, need access to capital at low cost. They can then leverage these to secure outside investments. And they also need debt relief and a mechanism for long-term debt sustainability. The Summit of the Future in September will be an opportunity to create political momentum for these reforms. It will also agree on a global digital compact aimed at increasing access to digital technologies, including for SEEDS and least developed countries. We must ensure that all countries and communities have access to both the finance and the technologies needed to transform their energy, food, and digital systems. Distinguished guests, Excellencies, thank you for being part of this Global Business Network Forum. Together, let's work to deliver a better, more resilient, more sustainable future for the people of small island developing states. And together, let's raise our voice for the reforms that are needed for a more fair and a more effective international financial and economic system, able to provide to the SEEDS the resources and the capacities they deserve and they need. Thank you very much.
I thank you, Secretary General, for your statement and for your steadfast support to the Global SIDS agenda and your continued guidance and support to strengthening private sector engagement. I now have the pleasure to request His Excellency Mr. Fergal Naithen, Permanent Representative of Ireland to the United Nations, to deliver his remark.
Thank you very much, Under Secretary General Fatima. Your Excellency Prime Minister Brown, Your Excellency President Miyutsu, Your Excellency Secretary General Guterres, distinguished panelists, distinguished entrepreneurs and distinguished citizens of the small island developing states. Let me also start by expressing our condolences to the people and government of Papua New Guinea on the losses, the tragic losses due to Friday's landslide. I also want to start by thanking you, Prime Minister Brown, and the people of Antigua and Barbuda for the welcome, the cordiality, the hospitality, and also your vision in bringing SIDS4 here to your wonderful island state. And I think we need to give a special mention to your wonderful representative in New York, Ambassador Aubrey Webson, who has been tireless in ensuring that we come here with a really strong outcome document and a really strong action-focused document and plan for the future. Really, really important. I also want to thank you, President Miyutsu, for your insights and the inspirational work you're doing in terms of the private sector partnerships and also your work in empowering women entrepreneurs. It's really inspirational. Secretary General Guterres, it's a real honor to share a platform with you. Your voice for those who have no voice, your voice and your witness and your truth in support of our multilateral system against many, many challenges, whether it's conflicts, whether it's famine, whether it's an international financial system that's not working for so many people in so many countries, including SIDS, is truly inspirational. And I want you to know that Ireland will stand with you as you protect and project our very precious United Nations. Thank you. The commitments which have been made in Antigua and Barbuda this week, our recommitment to the 2030 agenda, which the leaders of the world recommitted to last year at the SDG Summit, the ambition and the urgency which we're putting into preparations for September's Summit of the Future and the Global Digital Compact show that the UN is needed more than ever. And it showed that we can come together despite all the challenges and all the differences and all the toxicity of modern global politics, that we can come together and we can work together for the benefit of all, for a better world for all. But to create that world, it really does take all of us. Member states, the UN system, civil society, academia, and yes, the private sector, working together in partnership with a shared vision to ensure that the benefits of progress, of technology, of entrepreneurship benefit all of us, communities and private sector. And I think that's really, really important. Towards this end, the SIDS GBN was established 10 years ago with the aim of harnessing the work of private sector actors for the benefit of small and developing states and for the benefit of private sector in that win-win dynamic that we've heard so much about these past 2 days. And also about giving visibility to the opportunities for businesses working in SIDS markets. The discussions we've had over the past few days, and I've really enjoyed being here and hearing these discussions, is just the real importance of partnership at local, regional, national, and indeed global level. There have been tensions in the room over the past few days, tension between private corporations, citizens, activists, communities, and that's as it should be. Tension, challenges, debate, dialogue. But as entrepreneur and fellow Irish person, Deborah Brosnan said yesterday, the important thing is we're all in the room together, we're all listening, we're engaging, we're challenging, we're working. As she said, sometimes we need interpretation between public sector speak and private sector speak, and that's okay. And that's the real value of forums like this, and it's been a really impressive 2 days. The commitments made to work with the private sector that have been set out in the Antigua and Barbuda agenda for SIDS, which will be adopted this week, must be realised. It must be a living document, a document that can guide us to a journey towards resilient prosperity, sustainable prosperity, inclusive prosperity. The challenges facing SIDS, from the impact of climate change to debt vulnerability, are very, very real. They're very present challenges for the coming 10 years. We know what they are. We have the science, we have the analysis, we have the data, but we also know that we can have the solutions. But they won't be achieved with a business as usual approach. We need innovation, as we've heard in this room these past 2 days. We need innovation, we need imagination, we need creativity, we need bravery. And private sector organizations, companies, partners, SMEs are absolutely vital in driving forward solutions. And we need to support and empower those kind of partnerships. And we believe this business network can be a vital platform for such engagement going forward. Ultimately, we're talking about sustainable prosperity for all. I think the days of chasing short-term profits with no thought for long-term impacts have to be put behind us. And we believe, certainly Ireland believes, and I think many colleagues in the SIDS forum and at the UN understand the potential in long-term sustainable economic development. We believe this is important for communities and countries and societies, but it's also more beneficial for entrepreneurs and the private sector in the long term. And we believe business models must place a premium on caring for our people, our communities, and ultimately our planet. And we have seen throughout this forum these past few days how this can work. Some extraordinary, innovative projects and initiatives that have been truly inspiring. And I think what we've heard and seen and learned over these past few days should really inspire us as we go forward. Just in relation to Ireland, why am I standing here? I suppose it's been, for Ireland, we've been a long-standing supporter of the SIDS GBN. We have a new national strategy for partnership with SIDS launched at COP27 last year by our Deputy Prime Minister. And we're really committed to deepening the engagement with this network in the coming years. I also have a role co-chairing the steering committee for partnerships for SIDS with my colleague from Palau, Ambassador Said, and we want to deepen the connection between the private sector actors and our work at the UN. And sometimes that can seem like a huge gap, but we want to close that gap as best we can. And again, working closely with High Representative Fatima and our team in the OHRLS, as well as the SIDS unit in DESA, we will work to ensure that the great ideas and the best practices that have been showcased at this forum can be amplified and learned from as we work to implement the Antigua and Barbuda agenda. Prime Minister, President, Secretary General, distinguished guests, as we look forward to this coming decade for SIDS, I think we can be daunted by the challenges, but we can also be excited by the potential that we've had here. And I know that that's a view that's shared in this room. So let's drive on. Let's make this week the best week we possibly can. Let's make it a really, really successful SIDS conference. Let's approach the challenges with determination and energy, inspired by what we learned and heard and seen in this room over the past few days. And let's make this conference the best possible SIDS conference ever. Thank you very much.
I thank you, Ambassador Mathen, for your statement, and also take this opportunity to congratulate you for your excellent stewardship of the Steering Committee on Partnerships for SIDS. And I would like to also thank Ireland for being such a strong partner of the SIDS GBN. Thank you, Ambassador. I have the pleasure now to give the floor to Ms. Pamela Coke-Hamilton, Executive Director of the International Trade Center. Pamela.
Thank you so much, USG Fatima. It's awesome to be here with you. I know we all share the passion for the importance of private sector. Honorable Gaston Brown, Prime Minister, it's a wonderful time to be in your island again. I always like to come back to the Caribbean. I don't care which one. I'm non-exclusive that way. Honorable President Muzi, thank you. Very nice for you to have you. And Secretary General, as usual, it's always wonderful to see you. Honorable members of the platform, other invited guests, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank the organizers for making the SIDS Global Business Network Forum possible. This event matters because it brings to the fore a conversation that should be taking place in every venue where SIDS are being discussed. The outcomes agreed at SIDS 4 will only deliver on the goal of resilient prosperity if we work to support the drivers of that resilience, SIDS small businesses. They're the ones driving the solutions to many of the world's economic, social, and environmental problems. They're the ones who know what it's like to balance the need to build a profitable business and the need to limit environmental harm. They're the ones who are the pride and promise of SIDS economies. And they're the ones at risk if we don't do our part. In other words, if we're going to deliver on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, not to mention the Antigua and Barbuda Agenda for SIDS, we cannot afford to have the voice of the private sector in the background. It can and must be at the forefront. And that's why ITC has brought some of these MSMEs to SIDS 4, so they can share their stories with policymakers directly. Like a woman named Sophia Searles, who helms an agro-processing company in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, another small island state here, and who has overcome gender barriers, natural disasters, and a global pandemic, all while growing her business. That's one of the many stories of what resilient prosperity looks like in practice. And it's a reminder of what's at stake if we fail to match Sophia's ambitions and Sophia's resolve with our own. For 60 years, ITC has been strengthening the competitiveness of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises around the world. In SIDS, we work directly with SIDS policymakers, helping them craft national export strategies so SMEs can thrive and thus enable trade-led development. We also work daily with business support organizations, from chambers to trade promotion organizations, to enable an ecosystem that fulfills small business needs. But more needs to be done. And SIDS 4 gives us that opportunity as the international community to focus not only on the challenges, but also on the solutions. One of the biggest challenges we've seen based on our work is that there just isn't enough data including on key trade and market access developments and trends. Not only does this mean that policymakers are making decisions based on incomplete or outdated information, making it harder to attract investments, increase trade, and access affordable finance, but small businesses like Sophia's are often unable to identify key export opportunities and risks and optimize their supply chains accordingly. We'd like to congratulate Antigua and Barbuda for spearheading the creation of the Center of Excellence and its Global Data Hub, which is a critical step and solution for addressing this problem over the next 10 years. ITC stands ready to work alongside you, Prime Minister, and other heads to support these efforts, including through our new SIDS Trade Tracker and existing tools like our CARIFORUM Focus Export Potential Map, and through our new guide for business support organizations, which includes advice on how to gather data on climate-related risks that agri-food SMEs may face. We encourage others to do the same and to partner so that we can scale up to close the data gap. And not just the data gap, but also those in the areas of finance and in the enabling policy environment, as we've heard discussed over the past few days. If we want to chart a path to resilient prosperity, I suggest we focus on small businesses first. As someone who has spent my professional life working on behalf of SIDS small businesses, we have to make SIDS 4 count for them. We must do everything in our power to ensure the ambitions expressed this week in Antigua and Barbuda are matched with concrete, measurable actions that deliver for all, including small businesses. We cannot afford to be having these same conversations 10 years from now at SIDS 5. By then, it will be too late to turn the tide in favor of SIDS and all they have to offer. By then, the biggest threats we face now, particularly climate change, won't just be threats. They'll be harsh, unrelenting realities. By then, resilient prosperity may lie permanently out of reach. We can do better, and I believe, based on what I've heard this week, that we will. Thank you all, and congratulations once more to the organizers.
I thank you, Executive Director, for your statement, and I thank you for ITC's very important work, especially to support the MSMEs in the SIDS, and also thank you for supporting their participation here in Antigua. I now have the pleasure to request Ms. Celine Garçon, President and Group Director Americas, FAGRO, to deliver her statement. Ms. Garçon.
Madam Chair, His Excellency Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, His Excellency Mohamed Muzu, President of Maldives, Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Excellencies and distinguished representative of the private sector, my fellow panelists. It is truly a privilege today to be discussing the Abbas and really taking it from a vision, from a commitment into reality. I am a representative of the private sector and also represent FUGRO. We are the world geodata leader, and as such, we map, model, and monitor Earth, both on land and at sea. This is exactly this data that is being mentioned and identified as critical in the Abbas. And it is critical to build resilient development of SIDS. The Abbas acknowledges that high-resolution data is at the core. It is important to inform policy. It is important to de-risk funding, and we talked about it today. It is also important to monitor. We need to monitor the progress. We need to monitor success. Companies like FUGRO have the people, have the technology, have the knowledge to collect, analyze, and provide fit-for-purpose data. We're, however, faced with a little bit of a challenge lately. We're being approached by NGOs, we're approached by governments, we're approached by companies to collect and provide some data. It is done in a very piecemeal, fragmented manner. and this makes it extremely inefficient and costly. The requests that we're receiving can also drive the wrong decisions because there are small sets of data. And while the focus is to provide a positive outcome, it may negatively impact the rest of the environment. What is needed is for SIDS in the same region to come together and agree on a baseline mapping program. And this is truly critical. Data is expensive. You mentioned the importance of data. So we need to drive value out of every square kilometer of data that is collected. So how do we do that? We do it at scale. We do it in a collaborative manner, in a unified manner. And we also upload the baseline data into a digitized environment. Why is this important? Because we need to upload continuous updated sets of data, and we need to be eventually to be able to create digital twins of various parts of the world. By way of example, I wanted to highlight the Tuvalu Coastal Adaptation Project. That was a fascinating project that highlights the 3 key points. First, it was co-designed and co-developed by the government of Tuvalu, and it was involved also the UN Development Program, as well as the Green Climate Fund. They came together, and we were involved with mapping at scale 500 square kilometers of the 9 atolls, the reef, the lagoons, the islands in 2 weeks. That is scale. Why is this important? It's because now various parts of the government are able to from that one baseline of data, to actually make decisions around reef restoration, of land use management. As a matter of fact, in 2023, the capital was elevated because of this data. So to bring Abbas from a vision into reality, we need to act fast. We need to think differently, and we need to collaborate. We need to map and collect baseline data with high resolution, leveraging the various technologies that the private sector can offer. We need the data to be made available in a digitized environment so that various stakeholders can have access, and so that eventually we can do modeling and create digital twins. We also need to collaborate and work together to go beyond the traditional borders. We heard today quite a bit about the collaboration between governments, between the private sector, between institutions. Time is of the essence, and we need to act now. Fugro is truly honored to play its part in this collaboration. Thank you for your interest and attention.
I thank you, Ms. Carson, for your statement and for clearly sharing with us the priorities and asks of the private sector. And through you, I would like to thank all our private sector partners for your excellent participation and collaboration, and very, very importantly, for your commitment to advancing the Antigua and Barbuda agenda for the SIDS. Thank you very much. Excellencies, we have come to the close of the GBN Forum, and I wish to thank all our distinguished speakers on the podium for honoring us with their kind presence and providing us with a clear vision for delivering meaningful partnerships for SIDS as we embark on a new decade of action. I wish to thank once again all our participants for their active participation and contributions. I look forward to continuing this important dialogue at the Private Sector Roundtable on Tuesday, 28th of May. And as I now bring the forum to a close, I wish to reiterate that my office will continue to work with the SIDS Global Business Network to further strengthen the partnership between the private sector and the SIDS in taking forward the new program of action, the ABAS. I thank you all. Thank you, Excellencies.